So now for part 3 of the final game in the Disney Infinity series, Disney Infinity 3.0. 2015 was a freaking huge year at the time for Star Wars. I don't know if y'all remember 2015, but back in that time, Star Wars was extremely brand new and coming out with all new stuff. And this is none the same for Disney Infinity. For example, there was a new movie coming out with that sick-ass teaser that everybody was freaking out before we actually found out how bad the new trilogy was eventually going to be, but that's besides the point. There was also announcements of a new Battlefront game, which at that time we hadn't even gotten a Battlefront game in like a decade at that point, which was freaking awesome. And of course, to jump along with the hype train that Star Wars was generating back in 2015, Disney would announce that they're releasing Disney Infinity 3.0, the Star Wars edition, which is basically Infinity's answer to the Star Wars franchise. This game this time around would of course feature Star Wars, but also a whole new series of improvements, and I think personally speaking, this is by far my favorite Disney Infinity game. I think despite the systematic internal flaws from the beginning, Infinity 3.0 was actually the best version of the game. There was many improvements all around the board. For example, there was more playsets, which actually rounded up the number to 6, same as the first game. There was also completely new things you can do in the Toybox and new complete features that were just awesome. Also, way better Toybox games, which I forgot to mention in 2.0, but they were pretty dumb in 2.0. So in 3.0, they were a much more higher quality and way better overall. Everything seemed to be going up for Disney Infinity 3.0, but like everything in life, it was sadly canceled for various reasons, which I will get into later. Overall though, let's get into the playsets and the content of Disney Infinity 3.0. For the playsets this time around, we actually have a total of 6 like I said before, and 3 of these are actually Star Wars playsets, which makes sense that this is mainly a Star Wars themed Disney Infinity game. The first of the Star Wars playsets, which is included in the starter kit, is actually the Twilight of the Republic playset, an original playset which is set in the Clone Wars of the Star Wars universe. The plot for this playset is basically you of either 4 Jedi characters must find out why a droid factory was weirdly turned on. You find out it's not the Separatists who are behind this, but actually Darth Maul, who is trying to raise an army to retake Naboo. You eventually find this out and stop this. Overall, I actually really enjoy this playset. For one, it does its own thing and has its own original story, which is overall actually pretty decent. Yeah, it's not anything like an amazing Clone Wars episode, but it honestly felt like a pretty half-decent Clone Wars episode, and I just really enjoyed it. It was way better to do an original story than just recap the prequels, which I don't need to be reminded why the prequels are bad. I mean, they are bad.
My lord, is that legal?
I will make it legal.
Also, the Jedi Combat and just the combat in 3.0 was also improved from 2.0. The combat in Disney Infinity 2.0 was great, but in 3.0 it's a huge improvement. It feels smooth, exciting, and fast and energetic. Overall fire. Also, the playset features many interesting and unique locations, and also, like I said, the mystery of the story keeps you on your toes, and overall it actually is a really good playset. I really enjoy it. The second Star Wars playset is the Rise Against the Empire playset, which is basically just the original trilogy weirdly smashed together in some weird-ass events, and comes together with some weird results. Now, you may be saying, well, what do you mean by weirdly smashed together? For example, there are scenes that are classics in the original trilogy, like for example when Darth Vader reveals to Luke that he is his father.
Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father.
He told me enough. He told me you killed him.
No, I am your father.
Withstand the power of the dark side. Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father.
He told me enough. He told me you killed him.
No, I am your father.
No, that's not true. That's impossible.
And the reason why it happens on the Cloud City is, well, is when you watch episode 5, it actually makes sense when they're running away from the Empire. Cloud City adds so much atmosphere and interest to the scene. It adds to Luke's loneliness, but also desperation in that case. While, like I said before in the playset, everything is just smashed together. So randomly during the Hoth attack in the playset, Darth Vader just randomly reveals, Luke, I am your father. And then Luke is just standing there just looking confused while Han over there is like, come on, let's go. Completely ruins the intensity but also desperation of the original scene. And there's plenty of scenes like this in the playset. Overall, I think it's a pretty bad and really stupid criticism of this playset. I do think that the gameplay of this playset is actually really fun, in particular the parts where the AT-ATs show up, where you get to climb up and take out the batteries to the machines like toys, so to speak, and adding to the toy aesthetic of Disney Infinity. I just really love this stuff, and it's really fun to play it. But like I said before, the weird summary of the movies that's smushed together in this playset is really dumb. In my opinion, I think they just should have done it like they did with the first playset. Had an original story set in somewhere in 4, 5, and 6, and just done its own thing and have more freedom to tell its own original story, instead of telling this weird-ass, smushed-ass summary of the original trilogy. Overall, it's pretty decent. It's not bad, but... And then we have the final Star Wars playset, which is actually just the movie tie-in version for The Force Awakens. This is a pretty more consistent story since it's just basically retelling the movie of The Force Awakens and not telling 3 movies into one playset, so that's positives, right? You can also get to play as Finn and Poe Dameron in this playset, but also you get to play as Rey. Yay, everybody's favorite Star Wars character. But yeah, the plot of this playset is basically just a movie of Episode 7, so like I said, if you know the plot of Episode 7, then, well, it's basically the playset. I'm gonna be real to be honest with you, if you've seen Episode 4, you've basically seen the plot for Episode 7, but that's besides the point. Overall, your opinion on this playset will really determine if you actually like the movie of The Force Awakens, because it's basically that movie. Overall, I actually think it's a pretty decent movie, at least compared to the garbage sequels that would come after, so overall, I actually think it's a pretty decent playset. It's better than Empire, but not as good and as interesting as the Twilight of the Republic playset, but overall, it has some pretty good narrative options, cool combat, and some pretty cool mechanics. It's alright. Now, luckily I don't have to stop there with the playsets, because one of my main criticisms of Disney Infinity 2.0 was the lack of Disney content. But 3.0 really does fix this issue. For example, this time around there were 2 playsets made for Disney properties and franchises, and 1 made for Marvel, which is overall a fantastic selection. It gives everybody a playset and all sides are happy in this scenario. So yeah, good job Disney Infinity 3.0. You did a good thing. Starting out with the first Disney playset, this is basically a movie tie-in with the movie Inside Out, which for the record is one of my favorite Pixar movies of all time, especially in recent years. But back to the playset, I actually really enjoyed this playset as well. It basically acts as a 2 to 3D side-scroller where you go through various parts of Riley's mind to help save Imagination Land. It's really colorful, unique, and interesting how many times the developers put you in unique scenarios that you gotta traverse over. It's overall really different, and I actually really enjoy this playset. It's really good. And then for the Marvel side, they actually have a new Marvel playset called Marvel Battlegrounds. The playset is basically a combat tournament, kind of Smash Bros type of style, so to speak, with even animation similar to Smash Bros. So, how does this translate into Disney Infinity? Well, I think it's pretty decent. The combat's fun, and I actually like the new system and the way the playset's built around it. It's actually pretty decent. But for the playset's length and story, my goodness, the story is extremely short in this playset. Like, really short. Now, I've complained about lengths of other playsets like the Lone Ranger playset or the Avengers playset, but I gotta weirdly say the Marvel playset was extremely short. Like, I was able to complete this playset probably in like 2 hours, if not 1 hour. It's really short, and that's not really a good thing. But at least I can say though that the playset story was overall pretty decent, finding out basically about the mystery of why Loki's stealing vibranium, and eventually find out Ultron is doing it, and he's the mastermind because he needs to get an Infinity Stone for Thanos, which you basically stop and prevent. It's overall a pretty decent plot and story, and it's actually an original story, since they didn't decide to adapt the Civil War storyline, which actually turned out for the better in my opinion. Also, another huge criticism of Disney Infinity 2.0 is the fact that also all the Marvel characters can't cross over in playsets. Now, I complained about this in Disney Infinity 1 with Disney characters, but I understood that because they were different franchises. But there is no excuse for Marvel characters, since all these Marvel characters all live in a shared universe for the most part, in most continuities. So why wouldn't all these characters be able to cross over in 2.0? It's just really dumb and stupid. They also improved upon what happened in 2.0, where characters from Marvel could not weirdly cross over with each other in different playsets, and had to get crossover coins like I mentioned before. But in Disney Infinity 3.0's Marvel Battlegrounds playset, all the Marvel characters worked this time around, doesn't matter from whatever playset it was, which is a huge benefit and pro to this playset. I'm glad they finally fixed it, and overall this playset's pretty meh. I also forgot to mention in these playsets, but the characters this time around also have different crossover coins. Now, none of the Star Wars characters can actually cross over with each other in different playsets, but I'm able to forgive this since it takes place in different time periods of the world, so characters would look older and that would need changes and all that. Overall though, these crossover coins, you only need to collect one of them instead of freaking 10 like in 2.0. It's overall, I guess, a little bit of improvement, but not fantastic. The final playset released for 3.0 was the Finding Dory playset, based on the film of that year. The plot of this playset is basically acting like a sequel, which basically you gotta go back to the sanctuary that you said in the first film, and basically save a bunch of fish as Dory. So, yeah. The gameplay is actually really fun in this playset. It's basically a 2D scroller where you have to interact with water, puzzle solve, and basically it's a really fun game overall to play. Also, you can create a really dope hub for your fish as they come in and as you save them. And also, all the original voice actors from the movie actually come back to voice their roles, which I actually really appreciate. This playset also introduced the concept of water. Now, this may seem like a really weird thing to bring up, but Disney Infinity's introduction of water and how it messes with the gameplay and world is actually a really huge deal in Disney Infinity, since, well, they could have used it maybe in the future for their Toybox creations. Overall, though, this playset was really awesome, and as a last playset for this franchise, it was a really nice last hurrah. Now for the Toybox disc and Toybox games. This time around, 3.0 completely got rid of the generic Toybox games that came with 2.0 and eventually introduced two completely new Toybox games, Toybox Takeover and Toybox Speedway. Now, I really didn't mention in the 2.0 video about these Toybox games since I really barely played them as a kid and really didn't have much experience, but from what I heard, they're really generic Toybox games that just use Toybox assets and are pretty generic overall. Unlike those Toybox games though, like many things in 3.0, the Toybox games were drastically improved this time around. Now, sadly in this video, I was only able to get my hands on the Toybox Speedway game and not the Toybox Takeover game because of the simple price of the Takeover game. But, like I said before, I'm just having my own opinions based off this one game. Regardless though, I actually really like this Toybox Speedway game. I don't think the campaign is really in depth, but like I said before, it was pretty decent. There's a decent storyline and actually features some highly polished cutscenes this time around. Main thing about this playset though is actually the awesome racing mechanics, which yes are very similar to Mario Kart, but regardless though an extremely fun and interesting racing mechanic. Made Disney Infinity's racing actually fun for once. Overall though, a really nice little addition. Once again, I really wish that Disney Infinity would have had a major campaign to go along with its games instead of these mini Toybox games, but overall these Toybox games are pretty fire. Now for the power disc this time around. Whew, how did the Disney Infinity this time around tackle the concept of Power Disc? Like I said before, I don't like the idea of Power Disc, but I think 3.0 actually improved upon the idea pretty well and a lot actually. For one, they got rid of the completely dumb idea of having them in mystery packs and put them in clear to see packages this time around, with 4 this time around in a bundle, sort of putting them in like waves. This is actually a really incredible idea. Actually seeing what you're going to purchase with your money and actually wanting to purchase the product instead of just buying these dumb mystery packs and wasting your freaking money. Once again, Disney Infinity, I'm glad you're taking baby steps this time around. Awesome. They also added some of the Power Disc items that you got from previous games actually as something to buy in game. Now this is not for every Power Disc, and a lot of the Power Disc items are still in the Power Disc, and the only way to get them is through the Power Disc, but some of them did actually make available in game, which was a nice small improvement. Also, some of the Power Discs this time around are bundled based on their playsets or theme or world, which also makes collecting Power Discs way more easier. Overall though, Power Disc had a massive overhaul in Disney Infinity 3.0, which is awesome. Now for the Toybox in Disney Infinity 3.0, which in my opinion is by far the best one. Upgrading from what was established in 1.0 and 2.0 and basically building on that makes this playset in Minecraft editor style of Disney and content awesome. Many core pillars of the Toybox were insanely improved. For example, like I said before, racing was improved. Combat was improved. Also, new completely interesting mechanics and smoother controls were introduced, and combat was also really fun, and there was also creating types of stadium games and tournament games in Disney Infinity's Toybox was fun. Also, the new mechanic of farming, which was an extremely interesting and awesome addition to the Toybox. Overall, the best Toybox yet and really fun. Once again, I've created so many crazy and if not stupid creations in this Toybox, and once again, it's always been the pride and joy of Disney Infinity. Sick as hell as always. Overall, Disney Infinity 3.0 was a much needed improvement to the series, for once actually fixing upon errors and issues made upon in the previous games and actually fixing them. Now, like I said, didn't fix everything, but definitely made a lot of really good changes. The introduction of Star Wars was pretty lit, but also the new Disney playsets were pretty lit. Overall, this Infinity was honestly really great. But, as that old saying goes, as everything goes up, everything must come down. And this is none the different with Disney Infinity. In the next video, we're going to be talking about the sad reality of and the cancellation of Disney Infinity. Once again, thanks for watching, and see y'all in the next part.